everybody. Welcome to another episode of Prop Talk, the official podcast of the Property Masters Guild. I am your host, Mikey Trudel, for today's episode. Chris Call is a little bit busy this weekend, so he could not be with us, unfortunately. But that's okay because we have a great guest coming to us on Zoom across all the way from New Mexico. We have property master Keith Walters in the house. How's it going, Keith?
Good. How are you, Mikey?
I'm doing really good, really good. And yeah, Keith, man, he has a whole bunch of credits that I can't wait to get into. You've been prop mastering for quite a bit. You've done credits such as Tom and Huck. You've done No Country for Old Men, to name a few. The Road, Jonah Hex, Lincoln. Yeah, man, really, really cool resume. So, um, yeah, New Mexico. Is that where you were? Did you come up in New Mexico or?
I grew up here. I grew up in a little town called Springer, New Mexico, and I got in the film business. It was something I'd always wanted to do, something I'd been interested in since I was a kid. Watching movies with my parents, with my dad. I would beg him at night to stay up after the news and watch some movie. I can remember The Searchers and Cool Hand Luke and different things watching with my dad. So
But your dad
I,
wasn't in the industry, right?
no, he wasn't. No, and he just loved movies, and he and my mom, they loved those great old movies, and I got such an appreciation for them. And I think my mom married my dad because he resembled Gary Cooper.
Oh
And
wow.
but that's just speculation on my part. But um, and all the westerns that were around in the early '60s when I was a kid, I just grew up on them. I watched, Rawhide and Bonanza and Gunsmoke, and so I just had this great uh, interest in the American West and film. And I went to college in Arizona, and when I got out of college, I had taken courses to kind of send me to law school, and I had
Oh really?
absolutely no interest in going to law school or being a lawyer. I enjoyed this, the study of it, but even my professor started saying, well, "Why are you taking these anthropology classes? Why are you taking these history classes?" And because I'm not going to be a lawyer. And but anyway,
Why'd you go to be a lawyer in the first place then?
my parents talked me out of art school, so it was just one of those, it was kind of the next thing. Um, and I never really had any interest in being a lawyer. I can't imagine myself wearing a suit and working in an office. And I don't even like the office part of this job. Um,
Yeah.
but I got out of college. Didn't have any interest in, a traditional job. So I had a saddle made, and I went to knocking around the country on big cow outfits in the West, and you know, kind of learned a different way of life and a different way of thinking. And
Did you grow up with like horses and stuff like that, or?
well, yeah, to a certain degree. I mean, it was I was out of college and relatively grown when I decided to just go full tilt, and it was a completely different lifestyle. It wasn't westerns on TV. It was it was the real deal. And
Yeah, you
but I
had more
learned
of
a lot.
interest in being a cowboy than even in the film industry then.
Yeah, kind of. I mean, even then I had interest in film, thinking, what this sort of thing, this subject would make a great film. This one would make, not every Western has to be a shoot 'em up,
Yeah, yeah.
um, but most of them are anyway. Um, so I got to the point where, cowboying is a single man's, it's kind of there's not a lot of money to it. And and there's not, I wasn't really looking for money, but I got the opportunity to see the Lonesome Dove set and meet some of those actors. And I ran into a friend of mine who was one of the prop guys, and he sort of his name was
What
Byron Thomas from Austin.
what
And
brought you to that set in the first place? Like, how did you?
I wanted to go see a movie set, and it
Oh,
was
and just your friends. You had friends that were working on it, and they just let you.
well, I had gone to the bar in the hotel where all the actors, all the cast crew were staying, and bar's a good source. And I met Ricky Schroeder, and I met Bill Sanderson and Tim Scott, and I visited with those guys, and Ricky and I kind of hit it off, and we were talking about different things, and he said, "Why don't you come to the set tomorrow?" And I said, "Oh, I'd love to." And so I went to the set, but I had no idea they were going to let me in. It was actually on a ranch where I'd worked before, so I knew the place. But I had my pickup truck and I had my saddle in the back of it just because I had been riding horses there in that
Yeah,
area.
because you're a cowboy.
Yeah,
You
and
had a saddle in the back.
so I went through the gate. The security guard just, he saw the hat, he saw the saddle, and he just waved me through like I knew what I was doing. I had no idea what I was doing, but
Yeah.
I managed to slip past the guard, and so and then I met Ricky there on the set. He was getting ready, and they were shooting a scene where all the cattle get to Montana, and they pick out their little ranch, and Tommy Lee Jones was there, and I sort of, I won't say rudely, but I didn't know at the time that leave the actors alone kind of thing. So, and Tommy was looking at me and he saw my hat and I walked up and I said, "Mr. Jones, how are you? I'm Keith Walters." He said, "Are you on our movie?" And I said, "No, sir. Just visiting." And so we talked for a second and that was it. And so, I talked to Ricky while I was there, and I ran into this friend of mine who had been in film school at the University of Texas, and he was one of the prop guys, and we were talking. He said, "Well, we have these scenes coming up where we need this and this, these branding scenes," and I said, "No, I'll fix you up." So I sort of got my foot in the door there. It was a couple of years before I ever really got, but I kept pursuing it, and I had heard the rumor, or I'd heard the story that Sam Elliott was coming to Trinidad, Colorado to shoot a Western. Trinidad, Colorado is about an hour from my house. That's our Walmart trip.
Oh wow.
So, so I called up there, and the office, production office, gave me the prop master's name because I had some holsters and Indian things, different things I thought maybe I could at least rent them. And so the prop master, he called me back and he said, "Why don't you come up here and have dinner with me, and we'll look at your pictures and stuff." And um, so I go up and I meet Mike Parsons from Dallas, Texas, and we have dinner and we visit. And by the end of the evening, Mike says, "You want to be the third on this show?" I said,
Wow.
"Oh boy, you bet." And
I don't
so
know a
Mike,
damn thing of what I'm doing, but
I
yes.
got, I don't have a clue, but
Yeah.
I'll do whatever you tell me. And so I went to work on that show, and that was in 1990. There's a Western called Conager. Um, I met Sam Elliott a day or two after I'd gotten, started the show. And Sam and I have been friends for 35 years.
Oh wow.
We talk on the phone. I call him sometimes for advice. I call him sometimes just to let him know what I'm doing, visit. Um, so it's been great. I've been friends with he and Catherine Ross for all these years. And so Mike gave me my first job in the business, and then a little later, he called me and they were doing a football movie in Dallas. He said, "You want to come to Dallas?" I said, "Sure." So I went and did a Necessary Roughness.
Oh wow.
Um,
Did they put you up in all of this stuff? They give you housing and all this stuff?
no, no,
No.
it was this was those days where you had to kind of pay your own,
Yeah.
that kind of thing. Um, I didn't learn till later how to, make deals, and
Yeah, yeah.
but so anyway, I got little by little. Then I got a call to. I mean, it seemed like I was never working in New Mexico,
Oh, really?
but it's okay because I was able to travel, and it was good for me to get exposure somewhere else. Where they
Was was there a decent industry in New Mexico at that time
not
or
so much.
not
No,
so
it
much?
and really there were when I after I became a prop master, there were really only two prop masters that I know of, myself and a guy named Billy Ray.
Right.
And, and Billy would take jobs, LA prop masters would come in and Billy would, work for them. Luckily, I could go out of town and work. So it didn't pigeonhole me
Yeah.
in in that sense, which was good. But, it's tough being away from home, but something you get used to. And so I started working like that, and I went to Mississippi and did Huck Finn with Elijah Wood when he was 11. And my first key show was in Atlanta. I had a buddy named Scott Stevens who I'd worked with in New Mexico, and he had been asked to do this show called Oldest Living Confederate Widow Tells All, and he couldn't do it. He was already booked up. So he said, "You want to do this show?" And I said, "Sure." Again, green as a gourd and not knowing what in
Yeah.
the hell I'm getting into. And so I go to Atlanta. I've never been to Atlanta. They didn't send me the script till I got there. I mean, they handed it to me when I walked in the office door. 215 page, 4 hour miniseries.
Whoa.
I know no one in Atlanta. So I'm trying to put a crew together. And
And you've never really prop mastered before this either?
no, no, I hadn't before this. And
So you don't
I'd done,
you're in a foreign place, you don't know where to find anything. On top of it, it's one of your
yeah,
first prop master gigs.
yeah. And but I'm braver than I am smart, I guess. Uh, so I just went to it. How I got through it, I really don't know. I told Roger Deakins um, not long ago that there was a point where I almost quit, I almost got fired, and I almost got in a fist fight with the producer. And Roger responded, "Oh, just a regular day on a film set."
Yeah, yeah.
Um, it was a very tough show for me. Um, and how I got through it is still amazing to me. Just good luck is I have no skill. I operate on pure luck.
Yeah, so obviously it was a period piece, right?
It
So
was 5 time periods. It was it was the Civil War. It was 1912, 1945, and the modern day. Maybe it's 4 time periods. I had Cicely Tyson and Diane Lane, Anne Bancroft, Donald Sutherland, um, that kind of actors, those kind of
yeah.
actors in the um, I won't mention their names, but I didn't get along with two of the producers at all. It just, it wasn't fun. It was just persistence that kind of dragged me through it. And but I got along great with the actors. I learned
That's
that
good.
protecting the actors is the key to our
Yeah.
job. I mean, protecting the director is too, but sometimes when the director sort of bugs out, you just protect the actors. And
Yeah.
there was one point during the show where Cicely Tyson, it was a funeral cortege. It was Donald Sutherland and Cicely and a whole crowd of people were walking behind a hearse to the cemetery. And at one point, Cicely wanted the director's attention for some reason, and his attention was drawn somewhere else, so he wasn't paying any attention. And she was becoming aggravated. And she finally, in front of extras, a crew, and everybody, she looks at me and she points at me and she says, "You're the only one that cares about me." And so I said, "Holy crap." And, but, she felt like I was protecting her, like I was looking out for her. And I think that makes our job, um, it facilitates our job when the actors are
Yeah.
on your side anyway.
Yeah.
Uh,
Probably didn't make the producers happy for that. That's probably I'm like, oh, this guy.
there was a point where I really didn't care if,
Yeah.
the producers were, and, in all fairness, they hired me sight unseen. I was green. Um, it was a very tough show,
How
but
were you within, like you said, you did a little bit of history in college and stuff like that. So did that help you with like getting antiques and
oh,
accuracy of the props
oh
and stuff?
yeah, oh yeah, oh yeah. That's for westerns and pieces with American Indians, Native Americans. That's been my study for years and years. In college and on my own, and
Totally.
so I mean you can see part of my library here.
Yeah.
um, um, so that is helpful, and that has drawn me to, gotten me jobs down the road that, when in films that were period films that the people in charge are wanting accurate um,
Yeah.
things. So yeah, I mean, I had researched those different periods, those time periods, and the things I found, you know, were were correct as far as I could make them correct. And
Yeah.
um, but I was glad to get through that film. It was a great credit. Um, at one point, when I was getting ready to tell them all to go to hell, there was a great production designer named Charles Bennett, and Charles is no longer with us, but he was very good, especially for Southern Victorian things. I mean, he was spot on.
Yeah.
And he said to me, I said, "Charles, I'm done with this. I'm going home." He said, "Don't let them take your credit. You've done all the work. Don't let them bring their guy in and take your credit." And I said, "Crap. Okay." Uh, just when I was getting ready to pull a big quitting, he talked me out of it.
And then did you feel fulfilled after with that job then? And after, like
Yes,
when it was all
yes,
said and done? Yeah.
yeah.
Because
I
obviously you
have to
stuck
say,
with it. You kept
I
coming
was
back and taking more.
I was glad to see the product, the finished product. It really it moved me. It was a good story. I'd read the book before I'd taken the project, and one of the perks that I like is getting to meet writers and musicians as much as actors. Alan Gurganis, who wrote the novel, was on the set. They gave him a little bit part in the deal. So I got the chance to visit with Alan Gurganis, apart from producers, and so I enjoyed that part. I got to be friends with Cormac McCarthy and musicians like Levon Helm and Tom Waits, and that's as fun as the actors, to me. But yeah, no, I was really proud of the film. I thought it turned out great, and and I kept me going. It didn't make me think about being a lawyer again.
Yeah, that's what I was saying. It's like you came back and you got another prop master job, so
Yeah,
it
yeah.
didn't discourage you from the job. Did
No,
you?
I was young enough that I bounced back from the beating I took. And it really it, it the work was fine. I think it's just that I learned that there's people out there that are just going to be jerks about stuff, and just try not to let it drag you down.
Yeah, yeah, you could say that with a lot of shows for sure.
Yeah. But
So
that was my first key show.
yeah, and you kind of kept rolling after that as a prop master credit. Did you then get any? Because it looks like you said was Tom and Huck was after that.
Tom and Huck was after that. That was probably my second. I went back and helped my friend Scott. We did Andersonville. I did second unit for him on Andersonville, which was a big TNT Civil War movie, and with John Frankenheimer directed. So, I've been real lucky to get to work with guys like that. He's gone now too, but he did Birdman of Alcatraz and Manchurian Candidate and
Oh, cool.
those kind of films, and so it was great to work with the director of that vintage of that, and he loved us. I thought the world of John.
Yeah. So was he New Mexico also or no?
Jo- who's that?
John?
John. Oh no, John's an old California
Oh
uh,
yeah.
director. Famous. He was Bobby Kennedy was staying at his house when Bobby Kennedy was killed in Los
Oh
Angeles. I mean, he's from those old days, and he was that was in Atlanta. Andersonville was also shot in Atlanta, so I turned around the next fall and went right back to Atlanta, and
got it. And then came back and went to Mississippi, he said.
yeah, I did Tom and Huck we did that in Huntsville, Alabama.
Alabama. That was what it was, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, and I did several shows with Disney with uh, Steve Summers directing or writing. Um, I was Barry Bernardi and John Baldecki. Those guys, they all liked me, so they kept calling me and hiring me, and that was good. That was a good run of shows there.
Yeah, I loved Tom and Huck. I mean, it was one of those movies. It was like kind of the perfect. It was meant for around my age when I was a kid, so I
Right, right.
came up to that movie. But cool full circle thing is I was a huge. I was a pretty big fan of that movie. I got to actually do an adult Tom and Huck adaptation. It was like my second film prop master credit also, but it was just like them as adults, but followed the exact same storyline. Just
Oh, really? Oh,
so
really?
yeah, but I got to make like some cool coins and the treasure
Right,
and do
right.
all like the cool things. Which again, there was such a low budget thing that it was like I was molding my own coins myself and like inside and finding like aging cans. Like I didn't know anything, but I was like figuring it out. It was like one of those
And
things.
and we still do it. I did a movie called The Homesman with Tommy Lee Jones a dozen years or so ago. And I said something to the makeup lady one day. I said, "Yeah, I've got to, I was home last night in my underwear sitting on the floor making scalps or making something. We still go to our room and we make I did Horizon a couple of years ago, and I told Kevin, I said, I hope the cleaning ladies don't go in my room because there's 2 dozen scalps laid out on the floor. And so we still build things and make
Yeah.
things.
Thought of that a couple times. Just like, man, if the cleaning lady does come into this hotel, what are they gonna think? For
Yeah,
the amount of guns
yeah,
that are like laid out.
yeah, yeah. They see me going through the lobby carrying a spear with eagle feathers on it, and what's the matter with those guys?
Yeah. So when did you like obviously you're based out of New Mexico. A lot of these people that they're pulling from, I'm assuming they weren't from New Mexico either. If it's from Atlanta and Alabama and all this stuff, they're probably pulling from everywhere, right?
Yeah, there wasn't a big film crew in Alabama. Most of the crew, I think, came from Atlanta to Alabama. Atlanta they were pretty hot when I first went there, as far as productions. And I
Yeah.
think something kind of slowed them down, but then they got their incentive at kind of after New Mexico and they really blew up and really got, and then Marvel went in there and so they got pretty busy for a while, but they were pulling um, people from maybe New Orleans too, but Atlanta. Um, and a couple of times I've been in the South, and New Orleans and Atlanta seem to be where they're
Yeah.
most of the people from, because there's in some of the little communities there's not really a film. We shot I did a movie with Tim Blake Nelson last year in Columbus, Georgia. Well, there's not a big film community in Columbus, but they're all
Yeah.
in Atlanta, so they had to put everybody up in Columbus.
Yeah. So during all this time, I'm assuming you weren't part of any union or anything. You're just.
I didn't. I was actually. I got in the
Oh,
union in Dallas on necessary
oh,
roughness, but then I sort of lost track, or they lost track of me, and it wasn't when New Mexico got their incentive back. Then the union became a more viable thing. It really, I guess, they had a union in New Mexico, but it didn't seem like it was. There were a lot of shows coming here that weren't union shows,
right. So it
and
almost seemed not necessary.
yeah, but it after the incentive kicked in here and got going, then the union became a bigger deal, and now we have. I mean, the other thing is that the film industry grew here kind of out of step with the number of people that were here qualified to, but little by little, it's caught up where there's people now that they say, oh, so and so's the prop master of that, and I got no idea who it is. It's somebody who was born after I was 35 years old or something. There's a lot of the community is much larger than it now, and
Yeah. Well, yeah, New Mexico seems to be one of the hottest places for film now. Um,
except at the moment, I don't
yeah,
know.
well, I think
Yeah,
we could say that about everywhere at the moment,
yeah,
including
yeah.
LA.
And it's I'm still willing to go out of town, which is helpful because I still need to work. I'm close to retirement, but Ford Motor Company and Wells Fargo keep sending me bills every month and telling me you can't retire.
Yeah.
But I got a call to go to Winnipeg, Canada a couple of years ago, and there was nothing going on. And I said, yeah, I'll go. And everything, there was a lot going on in Canada. So they didn't have anybody available to go to Winnipeg. And the producer, it was an, American company. I mean, it was a Disney company. So, we had American producers, and the producers were all friends of mine, and they said, well, let's call him and see if he's available. And so I went to Winnipeg and worked in Canada for 4 months.
On what show was that?
It's called, I don't know what it's going to be. I think it's going to be called Mike and Nick and Nick and Alice.
Oh, okay.
No,
This is something you just did.
like 2024.
Oh, gotcha.
Yeah. And comedy written by a great guy named Ben David Grabinski he was the director also. It was a lot of fun to do. It was a fun film, and a good script. Um, so I hope it turns out good for him. I hope I haven't seen any press recently, but um, and it was interesting going to Winnipeg. I'd never been to Winnipeg before, but and on the weekends I always try to go out and see different things around where I am.
Yeah. Do you
But it was a good experience to work in Canada too. It was good that I could say I got to work in Canada, and I've
right?
worked in Mexico. I got to go overseas a few years ago to India and Thailand,
Whoa.
and so that
Do
was
you do you work out of a 48 or what?
yes,
Yeah.
yes. We have a 48-foot trailer, and we have to unpack and pack, repack every time we do anything, and so I've got like 7 storage units in the little town where I
Oh,
live, that where I keep crap that I know I'm never going to use, and I just ought to throw it away. But there are some things that oh, we got that. Well, that'll be good. It's It's like
I've
every
heard.
podcaster. I think you keep
Yeah,
everything.
I was just saying. I think I've heard every prop master I've ever spoken to say those exact words.
Yeah, yeah. And it's, we didn't take the truck to Canada. We started talking about it, and I said, I'll never be able to manifest everything that's on that truck. You know, there's there's stuff in drawers on that truck that have been there since uh, you know uh, Clinton was president, and it's so we put a truck together after we got there, and we had a great lockup. I had good assistance there. Um, the Canadian people were great. I really enjoyed visiting with them. There's a little bit of that. Why are you here? But
Yeah,
not much. Not much.
right.
And then they were really for the most part. Everybody was very welcoming and very friendly, and we had great conversations. I asked guys about films they'd done in the Arctic and stuff like that, and
Yeah,
I enjoyed the experience of being in Canada.
yeah, that's great. When do you think when do you think work actually did start to kick up in New Mexico, and when did you
I,
start actually starting to be more set there?
I'd have to say in 2002, I believe is when the incentive really picked up. And I had been out of work and didn't know, if I was going to get to keep my house. I didn't know what,
Oh
when I
no.
started selling things, I didn't
Yeah.
know. Um, but then I got a call to do a movie called Off the Map in Taos. And Taos is about an hour and a half from my house. And it's a beautiful place. And I went and met with the production designer from New York. It was a New York kind of production, and they gave me the job. And it turns out they cast Sam Elliott in the lead. And it wasn't a Western. It was a story about a girl in 1974. She's a 14-year-old girl. They live off the map. They live in a house that Sam has built, and they get stuff out of the dump, and they make their own, and it was one of the best films I've ever done,
Oh,
um,
cool.
as a job and as a film. It wasn't a big production, um, but the whole crew was like a family. I mean, people were weeping when we wrapped. It
Oh,
was
really?
kind of moving experience, and um, yeah, it was really a unique, extraordinary um, job. And that's when I remember it starting to pick up. Then, I did a couple more movies. I had gotten a movie with Val Kilmer. It was a smaller film. And the day I went to work, I got a call from someone at Ron Howard's office. They wanted to interview me for a movie called The Missing.
Hmm.
He said, Ron Howard's office has called me. That's big stuff. And so I went and met with the production, and they hired me to do The Missing, Tommy Lee Jones. It was the first time I'd seen Tommy since I met him on Lonesome Dove. He had no idea who I was. Um, but we became great friends, and I've done 8 movies with Tommy, and we're big friends. And um, but The Missing with Ron was really kind of that put me on a level of respect that at least I felt like, you know, these people are talking to me like I know what I'm doing, not like I'm
Yeah.
a dumbass
Yeah.
kid.
I'm sure it helps that you are also I mean, just leaving town and being able to build yourself up as a prop master through all those years ahead of time before work did start to really solidify
Yeah,
yourself.
yeah, that I agree. That's exactly right. And but working with Ron was great. He's the nicest guy in the world. He let me contribute so much to that film. It was a Western. Um, he even called me into script meetings with the script writer, into a writing room, which was a great experience for me. I was able to make comments and give ideas about what the scene should be and what they should say. And so that was like they say, living the dream. That really was for me, being involved that closely.
Yeah.
Um, and I really enjoyed the film. I I haven't worked with Ron since. I saw him one other time, but his daughter did she was in a film. His daughter Bryce was in a film that I did, um, and she came to work, and I introduced myself. I said, I've worked with your dad and your brother, your uncle, and she came back the next day. She had talked to her dad, and her dad had remembered me, and said, "Be sure and tell him hello." And so that was great that after so many years that Ron Howard still knew who I was,
Yeah.
and but
What was
that's
the what's
go
go
ahead.
ahead. I was gonna say what's so I mean obviously you did a lot of westerns. I'm assuming there wasn't a lot of rental houses around there, but it sounds like you had a different way of sourcing. So if you had like a big cowboy scene, like what would you do with all of that? Would you manufacture a lot of the stuff yourself? Because I know you're dealing with. I'm sure you have your own leather person around there. And
Actually, yeah, I do. I'm gonna um, unapologetically plug them. David Carrico in Edna, Kansas. Um, he makes saddles. He makes historical saddles. And I first met David on a big Civil War movie we did in Kansas called Ride with the Devil, and we had a lot of reenactors. Ang Lee directed. It's a great a great Western, great Civil War movie with Tobey Maguire and
Hmm,
Jeffrey Wright, and it kind of got missed. It cost a lot of money to make, but they didn't push it. They kind of let it go, and but that's where I first came in contact with David, and I've got there's several other guys around that I've got my friend Steve Rick that lives in the town I live in that makes knives, anything metal. I go to
yeah,
Steve, he makes it for me, and he's copied. What I've done instead of renting things from the prop houses is I go through the research and I find an artifact that, I said, okay, let's replicate this artifact. So number one, it holds up. It's brand new. I mean, it's newly made, so
yeah,
but it's accurate. It's not the same old Hollywood. For me, Hollywood westerns, Hollywood just researches itself.
yeah,
They go back and they say, "Oh, look at that old worn out holster. That'd be perfect for a western."
yeah,
Well, no, it wouldn't. No, nobody's going to spend $40 on a Colt pistol and stick it in a holster that's going to rip apart and drop it in the dirt
yeah,
and lose it. People, I mean, there's a difference in things looking used and about to fall apart.
right,
And I've lost it many times, but I've had the argument many times with production designers, costume designers, directors, actors. I try to explain there's a difference in broke in and about to break.
yeah,
So not everything needs to look 150 years old. Look at the artifact. The artifact doesn't look that bad.
right,
It doesn't look that worn out. And I get the idea that they're, the look they want, but and ultimately I give the director whatever he wants. I try to offer up um, what I think is correct, and then they can listen to me or not, and I'll just go from there. But so over the years, yeah, we built up quite a bit of, and then I'll buy things from the company after, if I purchase a bunch of guns or I purchase holsters and stuff, I'll purchase them after the show, and they take up part of the storage that I spend money on every month, and um, so we built up quite a bit, and those are the things I really try to keep are the good, unusual things that you can't really find at the prop house necessarily,
yeah.
and um, but yeah, I mean, in westerns, we've collected, and like we had David Carrico, he brought out, I can't remember how many, it must have been 50 or 80 saddles to Utah when we did Horizon, you
Yeah,
know, but all the saddles are correct, and I'm friends with all the wranglers, and they I put it in my budget, and they're happy to, they don't have to worry about the expense of it, and
yeah.
then we have the correct items.
Do you guys have any prop houses out in New Mexico?
Well, I guess there's a couple that I don't really know much about that are kind of new. There
Yeah,
is a fella named Brett Andrews who has really, he and a guy named Mark Hansen have put together a thing in a place in Albuquerque where they're really it's expanding, or it was last year when I last dealt with them, and they have a lot of I mean, they have a lot of everything. They've got a lot of military gear. They've got a lot of police gear, protective vests, and they've got airsofts, and so they're expanding their business, and they've got a manufacturing section where they can manufacture, rubbers and certain
yeah,
things. So I'm not sure how well they're doing with the state of what things are right now, but they were doing pretty good last year, and um, but we don't have any place like ISS, a big brick and
yeah.
mortar like that, and um, so but we all have, I have my channels at all those places, with Larry Zanoff and weapons, and
Of course.
you know Greg Bilson calls and checks on me when he hasn't heard from me in a while. He checks on me to see that I'm still working and going.
Yeah. So that's it. Obviously, you do a lot of shoot 'em ups, or you have done a lot of shoot 'em ups, and you've
Yeah,
dealt with guns a lot. I'm sure the whole Rust incident, being in New Mexico, I'm sure you weren't thrilled about the stain that's kind of left around.
it's really bad, Mikey. It's a completely needless thing. Um, it's just, yeah. I mean, it made me sick when I heard about it, and I was on set on another set when the producer came up to me with his phone. He said, "Have you heard about Alec Baldwin shooting two actors or shooting two people on a set?" I said, "No," but then all of a sudden my phone starts lighting
Uh,
up, and we start getting information, and we start hearing, and then the news media start calling me. Actually, one of the
mm,
first calls I got was from a camera operator friend of mine who was friends with Helena also, and he is upset. I mean, completely, on the phone, he's terribly upset, and rightfully so. And he wants to know if I know anything that happened. I said, "No, I wasn't there, James. I don't have any, I don't know any more than you do."
yeah.
But so the reactions were immediate, and then the news media starts calling everybody, and at first I didn't want to answer it. Then I started hearing all the misinformation. I thought you guys only use prop guns. I thought you only, So I did talk to a couple of like the Washington Post, um, ABC, and then it hit me that there were other guys talking, and I said, I don't really want my name associated with this. I don't want to become the face of this.
Yeah, yeah, totally.
And it's something that, and it's really goofed up the nature of film, action films, gun, wherever guns are used. It's I don't really even know what to say about it so much as the cardinal rule, like I told the news media, is that we have protocols for safety for everything in the business. There's protocols for helicopters, there for water work, for high falls, for pyrotechnics. but it's like driving down the road. There's a stoplight, and if it's red, you stop. If you don't, you run the risk of getting somebody hurt or killed. You have to follow the protocols. You have to, there's a reason for it.
Yeah.
And you can't take live ammo onto a movie set.
Yeah.
I mean,
Well,
it's a real simple deal, but it's not simple. There's a boy without his mom, there's a husband without his wife, there's a family destroyed, for a crummy movie. I mean, it's just not, it's just not worth it. And I don't understand how it happened, why it happened. It has changed everything. All the insurance companies, have gone to mandating airsofts or rubbers, or I've been through several shows since then where it's only it's only airsofts or rubbers, and I try to explain in a close proximity setting we can use full plug,
solid plug. Yeah.
solid plug, and um, they don't get it. I mean,
Yeah, I've done a lot of the same. I've had success on two movies talking them into it. The last show that I was on, it was a crazy like, as obviously it was the last show was on the first meeting's like, oh, we're going to use all fake guns, all airsofts, but then they took one further because they're just like, oh, not only can it be just airsofts, it's like for these ones we're using squibs, so it has to all be CO2, no green gas, no that, because they don't want to ignite. They don't want to ignite
a squib.
squibs
Yeah.
and make a thing. So it was like, okay, but they wanted specific types of guns, which are harder to find
Yeah.
that a lot of the
Yeah.
prop houses didn't have in non-green gas. So
Yeah.
kind of like we're on the truck trying to accommodate this, Mickey Mousing some like green gas guns to make them CO2, and they'll work for a little bit, then they kept breaking, and we're like, we could make this happen. So like eventually I was like, this is just stupid, like we should be using solid plug guns. And
Right.
I remember
Right.
I talked to like the onset safe mandated safety person, and I explained to them, I was like, listen, either we're going to give an actor gun that we know is going to break, or we can give him something we know is efficient and safe
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
made for this. And he's like, yeah, I agree. And then it was just like, okay, meeting with this person and meeting with this person. And then the first AD's like, I don't want to be one of the only two shows using blanks in town. I was like, well, it's the safest thing to do. So that's exactly why we should be using this.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
man, it went all the way to having a meeting with Netflix, having a meeting with the main actor, having a meeting with that, for them to finally be like, okay, you're sure it's the same? We're like, yes, it is. And it went so smooth. And everybody on set again is just like, I'm so glad we did it this way.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
been a battle to be able to just do it. And I think we only fired off like a total of like 8 shots the entire day too. So it wasn't even an excessive, you know?
It's just I mean, it's it's understandable, but it's knee jerk reaction to the deal when there are so many films, so many prop masters and armorers who who know what they're doing. I mean, I did Extraction. I had
Yeah.
plenty of armorers. I did Sicario, and I was the armorer plus the
Yeah.
prop master.
Yeah.
It wasn't like, oh, I'm too distracted to pay attention to the guns.
Yeah. Yeah.
It just
No.
wasn't that way.
No.
And so for someone to say, oh, well, she was doing two jobs and it was the problem is hiring someone who's not qualified for such an important position.
Right.
It's not like the craft service assistant, and nothing against that just came to mind. I mean, it's not that's not a position of responsibility where serious injury and death can occur.
100%.
But an armorer is.
Yeah.
And just to randomly pick someone who will take a cheap wage is you know that speaks about the industry. Um, that needs to be fixed. That's what needs to be fixed,
Yeah.
and not trying to make a guy cobble together a CO2 out of a green gas gun. And
Yeah. Exactly. And that's it. It's like, and even it's crazy with the argument we had because it's like when I first told like a couple of the producers, it's just like, yeah, they're gonna break. They're like, why don't we just get like five of them? So if they break, we just give them a new one. I was like, because I'd rather not put something I know is gonna break in an actor's hand, and
yeah,
because we don't
yeah,
know which way it's gonna break, and then they're gonna fire it, and then when it breaks, they're not gonna feel comfortable with. There's just a
yeah,
million different elements to this.
yeah. There's no reason to keep doing the wrong thing when you know how to do the right thing.
Yeah, and that's it. So, luckily, I'm happy to say in both situations I've been able to sell them on it. It took a long time, and I'm sure it's going to for a lot more shows. And I think a lot of people, like I know, like when you weigh the options and you know it's the right one, and you have the right armor, like
Yeah,
it's worth just going through it. And I think I mean, it's going to take a while to get the view of it back in Hollywood back where
yeah,
it should.
yeah, yeah. And hopefully, people with logic will take control ultimately.
Yeah. Um, to move on, I do want to talk about No Country for Old Men and how that was for a while, which is obviously
Okay.
turned into a brig. How was it like working with the Coen brothers, first of all?
It's those guys are, I, for my money, they're probably the best directors in Hollywood,
Yeah.
and I think the world of both of them. There's nothing I wouldn't do for either one of them. I've done 5 movies. Well, I've done 4 movies with the pair of them, and one with just Ethan.
Oh wow.
Um, it's it's just No Country was a great film experience. It was a really hard movie just for physically for locations and the amount of things involved and but um I think it's probably one of the best films made in the last 50 years or more. I can't think of um it just was top notch all the way around. And
Is that how you felt once you read the script too?
it was, and I've always been a Cormac McCarthy fan. I had not read that book, but I got a call like in December, around just before Christmas, from a producer named Bob Graff, who is their usual, their Joel and Ethan's. He's part of the team, and Bob called me to see if I was available to do this Cormac McCarthy book that Joel and Ethan were going to direct. And I said, "Well, I checked my calendar, but yeah, I think I'm available." Uh, No, I jumped right. I was all in, and I got the script and I read the book. And Josh Brolin, who is a great old friend of mine, he told me that he didn't realize it was going to be what it was. I did. I knew from the start. This is even when they cast Josh. I mean, they looked at, so the way I heard it was that Tommy was the first one they cast, and Javier was the second, and then they had some other options for Josh. But I'd worked with Josh before, and one day Joel said to me, we've cast Josh Brolin as Moss." I said, "Oh, I think that's great." And to me, he was the perfect casting for that character. I don't, for some of the other selections they had, great actors, great presence, but Josh was born to be Llewellyn Moss in that movie. And so I just had this great feeling through the whole show, that it was going to turn out to be something big. And as it turned out, I didn't have to make a work call for 10 years after that show came out. It was great for my career. And um, and I've enjoyed working with them. I did a Serious Man with them a year or so after that, in Minneapolis. Um, Great little film. It was nominated for Best Picture also. And we had a lot of fun. It wasn't a real, it wasn't a grindy, hard location film like No Country was. And then I did True Grit after that with them, and then I did Buster Scruggs,
Oh, right.
and then Ethan did a film last year before last called Honey Don't.
Oh, cool.
It's a lot of fun. We shot that in Albuquerque.
Oh, nice. So I always say this with name directors. I always ask these questions is as far as accessibility and stuff like that, how accessible are those? Because you do hear a lot of like the bigger directors, like it's harder to get the time of day from to get
Yeah, yeah.
decisions.
I've been lucky that way. Always Joel and Ethan are really accessible.
Yeah.
You walk up to them and talk to them. You ask them a question, whatever whatever you need. They're model filmmakers to me. They're the kind of, every day you get sides with storyboards on it.
Oh,
So
cool.
so pretty much what the
Pretty
shots
big.
are.
Yeah.
And then I've got several published books somewhere in here that um, they're bound storyboard books, with all the shots in it. And they'll do their own thing or they'll do something different, but there's always that guideline.
Yeah.
And
They
so
know what they know what's going on and they want everybody to know what's going on
yeah.
too, as much as
And
possible.
and they'll come to you and talk to you about something if they're concerned about something coming up, or and they're very approachable as to whatever you need to ask them or deal with them, or
Yeah.
and their sets are that way. I've haven't worked with anybody where it's been difficult on a Coen Brothers set. It's the difficulty is just in their scope of the subject, the locations involved, and but it's all worth it. It's all fun. It's great experience.
Yeah. Do you usually get a show and tell with them or more than one show and tell that you get to?
Yeah, yeah. The first No Country, we did a really intense um, show and tell. We had everything laid out. There's been times when they've started trusting me, and I'll show them things as we go along more so than just one big. But we usually do one big show anyway,
Yeah.
and then if there's things that are being manufactured that aren't ready yet, then as I get them, I'll show them, and we figure out how to, if there's changes that need to be made, but yeah, as far as information, they're, you can get it from them. There's no blocks. There's no,
Yeah.
they sit at the monitor. They sit, there's no trailer hideout uh,
Yeah.
kind of
So,
thing.
so talk about the adaptation of Javier's the air piston gun thing. Obviously, that's your key thing for the entire.
It really became such an iconic thing. Just I, I mean, I guess you see the story and you expect that it would, but we the effects guys, Peter Chesney milled this little silver gun thing, and he had several made where one would pop out and knock out a lock that they'd rigged, and
Yeah.
so there was this little bolt gun thing, but we had to have this air tank and this hose hooked up to it, and I can really stretch this out and make it sound like a big complicated thing, but we're in a surplus store, and I saw two air tanks taped together with clear packing tape. And they were old and scarred up. And I said, I'm getting those. So I took those air tanks and I took them back and we pulled them apart and we put a piece of hose on it and had Peter's little deal. And they loved it. It was exactly the right height for Javier to reach down with his hand and pick it up by the petcock, by
Yeah.
the valve on it. And so it was that complicated. We stuck a hose on a tank, and but it nobody had ever seen anything like that, you
Yeah.
know, and it was unusual. Cormac has some unusual things in his writings anyway, and this was just a this bolt gun. Who'd have thought to use that for killing somebody? And um, but it became this iconic thing. It's like on a list of with the Maltese Falcon and the Rosebud
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
thing and uh, uh, so I was real proud that you know that made it that big a an
Yeah.
iconic deal. And
Sometimes when something's meant to be, it's clearly meant to be. It
yeah,
just
yeah, and of
drops in.
course Javier Javier sold everything.
Oh yeah.
I mean, he could have had a fuzzy rabbit and it would have been scary,
Yeah.
stuffed a plush rabbit and it would have been scary. But um, he was just, and it was funny. He's a very gentle, very, very nice guy. And I've had people tell me that guy scared me to death. And the first time I met him, we went to a gun range in Santa Fe. They wanted me to, show him how to operate different guns. And so he shows up there and he's in his shorts and his flip flops. And he says, "I've never touched a gun in my life." I said, "Don't worry, I'll make you a killer before we're done." And we went in. I showed him how to shoot the gun and load it and the safety of it. And it wasn't a big long deal. And but at the end of the show, when he was leaving, someone had made him a cake that had tombstones of in it of everyone he killed in the movie.
That's awesome.
He yeah, he was just that kind of actor that owned that part. He just
Yeah. Yeah, I he's a funny guy. I've worked with him before too, and with the rifle. And I remember the scene. He just had to. There wasn't any like blank firing or anything like that. He just needed to cycle the shells. You know how
right.
to do it. And he's so funny because it's such a serious scene, but in it, he's like, "All right, I'll get it." And you just yell out the side and go through and get like super. It's like, okay, yeah, you're a character for sure.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, No Country was is the best film I've done. And I'm really proud of it. I feel very lucky that I was able to be part of it for the legacy of it, for the history of it. It'll be one of those that they're showing in film schools, in 50 years.
I'm sure they already are.
Yeah, oh, I'm sure. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Well, coming out of that and going into another big director, you're somebody who got to work with Steven Spielberg. Uh, so how was that like working on Lincoln? I'm sure he was a little bit less accessible than the Coen brothers.
Well, it's funny. He's very different. Um,
Yeah.
and I'll say this, it was a very hard show for a dialogue movie, and a lot of that had to do with the subject and the methods of the actors. Daniel Day-Lewis completely became Abraham Lincoln, which was stressful, but it was wonderful at the same time.
Yeah.
There were times Daniel would call me I'd have to go in his little room where he studied. They had a little room on the White House set, and he didn't want a director's chair. He wanted a period rocker. So we got this padded period rocker for him he'd sit and he'd study. And he never left the character ever, never left the voice, never left the walk. I mean, I'd see him walking across the stage going home, and he's still walking like Abraham Lincoln. And but I'd have to go in this room to talk to him about something, or wind his watch, or set his watch, or something. And he'd be talking to me, and I would literally get chills. I would say to myself, I'm talking to Abraham Lincoln. I'm in the same room with Abraham Lincoln. It was that effective. His
Yeah.
his his method. Stephen protected Daniel's method by making sure the crew was quiet and respectful, and but I could walk, and I did numerous times. I would, go, Stephen, I need to ask you about this. Would you, like this? Would you like that? And so he was very accessible. Um, Tony Kushner was on the set every day, the writer, and Tony was very accessible. Like, Tony, what about this? How, that they were both accessible. It was a hard film though, for some reason. It wasn't it wasn't necessarily fun, but
Yeah.
it was important. And I told Stephen when I left, he was very complimentary to me when I left, and said I had a great eye for detail. He really appreciated it. And I said, this was a very important movie for me to do, and thank you for having me, here. And the same, I told Daniel the same thing. I'm sort of straying off your question, but we had a little pocket knife made for Daniel. The pocket knife that Lincoln had in his pocket the night he was killed was a Congress pattern pocket knife with several blades in it. So I had my knife maker here in the town copy it for me. I had a photograph of it. It's in the Library of Congress. And he made a couple of them for me. And Daniel asked about it at the end of the show. And I said, you take it with you. And he said, oh, no, I'll pay for it. I'll take it. I said, I'll handle the production. You take it. And then he turned around and gave it to the boy playing his son, Tad. So I said, okay, I got to get Daniel another pocket knife. I'm not going to let it, So I got another one, and I gave it to Daniel. Well, he turned around and gave it to Spielberg, to Steven. And so I said, all right, I got one left. And so I went to him one afternoon, and I said, Mr. President, I understand that your uh, your benevolence has left you poor of a pocket knife. And he kind of chuckled, and I said, keep this one, will you? And so I gave him the third one. And so everybody had a pocket knife. But
Yeah.
um,
So funny.
it was a film that I'm also very proud of, and was glad to be a part of. I felt very lucky to have gotten that call. Um, and I don't know where the call came from. Because Steven was involved in True Grit so much in the production. I hadn't met him then, but um, True Grit was, I'd done it right before. But then Tommy Lee Jones was involved in Lincoln, and Tommy always speaks up for me anytime, you know, there's a show, anytime that, and he's gotten me several jobs. So it either came from Joel and Ethan, or it came from Tommy, or a combination. But I got the call to go to Virginia to do Lincoln, kind of out of the blue, and I felt
Yeah.
very fortunate to have
Yeah.
that opportunity.
Yeah. So I do have a question because with talking about Daniel Day-Lewis and how much of a character actor he is and how much he embodies this stuff. I'm curious when you're coming up or you're coming up with options for like character props specifically. Um, I know a lot of times when I'll get into pre-production, I'll kind of be able to pull the actor aside and present them with options to kind of go through. Is that difficult to do for a character actor when they're kind
It,
of
it wasn't so much for him, because he really didn't have that much.
yeah,
Uh, he had a lot of desk work, and sometimes he would come up with something at the last minute that blotter paper. Somebody go find blotter paper. We've got to have blotter paper. Daniel wants blotter paper, and
yeah,
so it was a lot of that kind of stuff. That scrambling for. But the like the pocket knife, I had a gold watch. These are things that I'd found that Lincoln had. So I offered them all to him. None of them were really scripted. It's not scripted that he carries a pocket knife, but he had it. He wanted some of these little blank cards that he could keep in his pocket, his jacket pocket. And because he had read, he in his research, Lincoln would make notes on these cards. So he would keep a pencil and he would keep a bunch of these cards. Periodically, just in his character, he would pull out his pocket knife and sharpen the pencil with it. That was just part of his, that wasn't anything scripted. It wasn't anything we talked about. That was, he just, when I offered him the pocket knife, he said, and told him about it and how, where it came from and all, he said, "Oh, I can really use this." And so he was, it was something
Yeah,
we hadn't talked about, something I just offered to him, and he made great use of it.
yeah. Did the production ever come after you for those pocket knives going missing?
No, no. They, the one thing they wanted to buy everything. They wanted the gold watch, and I said, "That's my gold watch."
Oh, it's from your kit?
Yeah, I'm not giving up my gold watch. So um, they then I never heard any more about it. But um, some there's been some actors who have it in their contract to that they get all of the props, the hero props. Um, Bob De Niro is one, and I had to
I've
sell
heard
the
of them.
company. I've had to sell the company an expensive watch, that I had because he wanted to take it home with him. And Kevin Costner has a museum that he keeps things, so I've given Kevin things, and for his museum. But um, yeah, there's actors who get that in their contract, and so I have to be careful what it is I'm giving them. I don't want to give up my gold watch that Abraham Lincoln used.
Yeah, no, totally. Um, so what is your just out of curiosity in New Mexico? Well, I guess with everything, because it doesn't look like you just do a lot of New Mexico. What does your ideal crew look like? Like, what does your team look like?
Well, so many times it's been myself and John Cameron, my assistant, who's been my assistant for almost 35 years.
Wow.
Um, we've done so many two-man shows, and every one we do, he says, "I'm too old to do a two-man show." And but more more recently in doing bigger things. For example, when we went to Thailand to do Extraction, we had two units going in Thailand. We were in India first. We didn't have any gunfire in India. India wouldn't let us import guns there at all.
Mm.
What they brought me locally was I can't even describe it. It
Oh,
I said, "Take this away, never bring it back to this set again."
it
You know,
was like
hand
what was
handmade.
alarming about it?
Well, there was an AK-47 frame with a 9mm pistol shoved up inside of it. So so the muzzle flash was lost, like inside the barrel.
Yeah.
It was of no, and the ejection port was something they'd cobbled, where it wasn't like
Wow.
a AK round coming out.
Yeah.
And it was sort of, I mean, I don't know what was really holding it in there, duct tape or something. But I said, "No, guys, we're not going to do this. We're going
Yeah.
to use our airsofts and our rubber guns here. And when we get to Bangkok, we'll switch to the real guns that are being imported in." And but for that show, I had myself and John um, on the first unit, and Russ Cannon was the first unit armorer. And then we had two extra Thai guys, Crackerjack, the best crew. I wish I could use them all the time. They were great.
Really?
And then Russ had, I believe he had two extra Thai guys on his armorer crew. Plus, we had representatives from the Thai Army as security there.
Yeah.
And then Ron LeCarey, he was the armorer on second unit, and he had the same group. And we had a Thai guy named B. I won't even try to pronounce his last name. The best guy in the world. I mean, he was the prop master on second unit, and I
Oh,
never had to worry about anything.
wow.
Um, he I went to talk to him one day at the catering tent or something, and he had a list in his notebook, and I said, "Well, let me see your list." He said, "It's in Thai." So I said, "Oh yeah, okay. You're
Yeah.
you're in charge of second unit B. You know what you're doing."
Yeah.
Um, and the Thai crew was great, all around the whole crew. But um, so there were 6 Americans on the extraction crew, plus 6 Thai guys, really, um, and that was good. I mean, we had enough crew. I think I had 6 guys on Horizon with Kevin, um, myself and John and Russ. I mean Ron and another armorer, Dan, and 2 prop guys, Danny and Matt. So yeah, I had 6 guys on. Plus, nowadays with all uh, the electronic paperwork, I have a coordinator. She
Yeah.
used to work on set with me. She was great. She never made a mistake on set. She was pinpoint focus. But she decided to get married and have children, so she can't go on location anymore. But she's my coordinator. She takes care of all the paperwork. When I get gas at 9 o'clock at night, I take a photograph of the gas receipt and I email it to her or text it to her, and
Yeah.
then I don't have to worry about sticking it in my pocket and losing it.
Oh yeah. I was just saying my coordinators they all have access to like my whole life. Let's say they
Yeah,
all have
yeah,
words
yeah,
to my eBay
yeah,
accounts and
yeah,
my
yeah,
Amazon
yeah.
accounts.
Mine too. She Tara can get into anything of mine. It doesn't,
Yeah.
sometimes I have to call her. I've called her before, you know, in between shows and said, Tara, how do I do this again on the computer? How do I look for this? Or, she has to give me instruction on how to use my own computer because I'm old and stupid and can't figure it out.
Um, no, we're coming close to the end of our time here, but I do want to ask you if what's been like your favorite, I guess, prop or to deal with, or is there something that comes to mind?
Gosh, that's without having time to think about it, I'm
I
not
know.
sure. Um,
And as somebody that has, I guess we could also, if you can't think of that one, I'll give you another one that might be too hard to think of. Somebody who has worked with some of the biggest directors in the industry, is there anybody that you wanted to work with that you haven't gotten the chance to?
yeah, there's a couple. Um, uh, I was the original prop master for Killers of the Flower Moon, and I thought, great, Scorsese's on my bucket list. But when things shut down and changed and came back, I didn't have the show. So Marty would have been one, and I prepped for 4 weeks, but he wasn't there yet, so I never met him.
Yeah.
Um, I think the main person that I really would have had like to have had a chance to meet, at least meet or work with, was Robert Redford. His movies in the '70s, especially Jeremiah Johnson, really inspired me to want to be in the film business. When I first saw Jeremiah Johnson, I was just a kid. It's funny, I have a sweatshirt with the logo, the movie poster on it, and I have people say, "Oh, did you work on that?" Yeah, I was 11. Um, but that film was a Western, but not a Western. You know what? It wasn't a gunslinging shoot 'em up, a cowboy thing. It was a Western before there were Westerns in the sense of the story. Um, so Redford was really the guy I would say I would like to have worked with. Um, I was supposed to do his last movie, Old Man and Gun, and there was some foul up difference of opinion of producers and I don't know the whole deal, but anyway, I wound up not getting the call to do the show. Um, uh, and that's one of those regrets that, I really, he's gone now, and I never got the chance to work with him. There's plenty on the list of ones I don't want to work with, but I'm not
Yeah.
going to mention that. I I've been real lucky. I've worked with Ang Lee, with Stephen Frears, with Joel and Ethan, with Spielberg, um, uh, John Frankenheimer. I know I'm probably forgetting Ron Howard.
Oh yeah.
Just really, I've really been fortunate to have had those opportunities, especially being a kid from Springer, New Mexico, and I've never lived in LA. I've worked there about 11 days in 35 years, doing
Wow.
pickups and stuff. And it's been fun. I've gotten to go to Paramount, and I've got to go to Sony, and, I got to stay in the Munchkin Hotel in Culver City one time. But I don't have to live there. I don't have to battle the traffic. I don't have to, I'm a different sort. I have 10 acres pretty much in the middle of nowhere here. And, you know, I, I get to visit cities, but I don't have to live there.
Yeah, yeah. Can't hate that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate you coming in and sitting down with me today, man.
Oh, I've really enjoyed it. I hope I said something intelligent.
Oh yeah, no. I always liked talking shop, especially with people in a little bit different markets. But yeah, touching up on especially it's funny. I think the like we always ask questions, oh, what type of thing of you would you wanted to work on or do you still want to work on that you haven't got a chance to? I'd say at least 50% of the time, every prop master says they want an opportunity to work on a Western, but never
Oh,
have. So you've been able to kind of slam the gambit on the
yeah.
Western.
I really wanted to get into business just for that, and I never
Yeah.
really were doing Westerns at the time, but, Westerns kind of come and go. And Sam Elliott said the thing to me that I always remembered. He said the thing about westerns is you either get them or you don't.
Yeah.
And I think there are so many potential stories that could be westerns, good westerns. I think they miss them sometimes with other notions that people have. Like, I've never seen Rust, I'll never see it.
Yeah.
But just from what I've heard about it, we really had to waste the time to do. There's so many good ones um, that I've gotten scripts for that just couldn't get the money to make it, and
Yeah.
that's the shame of it. I think is we rehash things, and we don't get the right stories. We don't get the best stories sometimes.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Well, it's a pretty good resume, and I'm glad that you've been able to have a career working on mostly, especially shows that you've loved and had a really good time doing. So it's
Yeah,
inspiring
yeah, yeah,
for sure.
yeah.
All right. Well, thank you, Keith. And thank you to everybody else out there for tuning into another episode of Prop Talk, the official podcast of the Property Masters Guild, brought to you by real working and retired prop masters. If this is your first time listening, please make sure to like, subscribe, and comment wherever you're hearing this. If you'd like to know more information on the Property Masters Guild or have any questions for us here at Prop Talk, be sure to go to propertymastersguild.org. We're also on Instagram at _ the PMG and all other socials. Um, yeah, until next time, I'm Mikey Trudel.